Hey everyone, so over 1 million people watched my video exposing Graham Hancock, the grifting fraud who peddles pseudoarcheology for cash and polarizes the public against the scientific community. But don't forget, he's a cult leader with many loser acolytes that also have to be dealt with. Today we are going to deal with one such loser, and his name is Jimmy Corsetti. Let's get started. If you'll recall, my video on Graham also introduced Dan Richards and Jimmy Corsetti, the bumbling bebop and rocksteady to Graham's shredder. Dan already got his extremely devastating follow-up video, where I showed that he's a clueless asshat who can't even read a Fox News article, which has helped put a nail in the coffin of his waning relevance, since he can't get anyone to watch his content anymore. In that video, I also promised that Jimmy's video would be coming soon. I waited a bit because it seemed like he was gearing up for a bunch more bullshit on Göbekli Tepe, but he's been sitting on his ass for months publishing next to nothing for who knows what reason, so I figured it's time to smack him around a bit anyway, so that I can then move on to other members of this cult that lately have been gaining more traction than him and Dan. So let's talk about Jimmy, the antics that make him such a repulsive scumbag, and debunk all the lies he tells about various archaeological sites. Sound good? Great. Now, wee little Jimmy is best known for three things. 1. Talking about something called the Richat structure and pretending it's Atlantis. 2. Peddling endless conspiracies about Göbekli Tepe. And 3. Being an insufferable toxic douchebag harassing archaeologists all over social media, especially Twitter. This last one is in contrast with his YouTube content, where he puts an enormous amount of effort into sounding like a normal, clean-cut human man who is just asking questions. A marked shift from Dan's amazing ability to act like a feral cave troll on mescaline in every imaginable situation. But once you know who Jimmy really is, his pageantry on YouTube becomes quite transparent. To set things up, let's briefly go over Jimbo's general timeline. This entire cult is 100% reliant on Joe Rogan for survival, and Jimmy first shows up there on December 1st, 2021. Here's a teaser.
Atlantis was said to be a kingdom made up of, or an empire, made up of 10 kingdoms. And then there was the lost city of Atlantis, which was the capital.
Yes, Jimmy, a sprawling empire of 10 magnificent kingdoms that has somehow completely vanished without a single trace. Great work. Then came this article in Input Magazine, January 10th, 2022. Who built the pyramids and how? The debate rages on YouTube. And of course, by debate, we mean a few grifting assholes lie about archaeology and denigrate real experts in the field, while those experts ignore the grifters and just continue doing real science. The introduction talks about Jimmy's investigations of blocks that fit together so super perfect, as though this hasn't been explained immaculately by archaeologists. And then here's Jimmy Anna Jones showing off his cute outfit while on one of his visits as a tourist, since his fans think that simply going to a place makes you an expert about it. And that's the grift, to convince other people that going to a place can make them an expert too. Which is why grifters like Jimmy, and other frauds we've covered like Billy Carson, charge a bunch of money for group trips to these sites. Convince people you have super special knowledge about a super special place, and then charge them quadruple what a trip should cost just to go there with you. Grift accomplished. And when real experts debunk your fake knowledge, just whine about how the broken, closed-minded ivory tower establishment is afraid of new ideas, and you're being censored by the Illuminati lizard people, just like what happened to Galileo, and blah blah blah. You know how the script goes. Anyway, after the slight bump in status from Rogan, in 2022, Jimmy began relentlessly trolling absolutely every legitimate scholar who was debunking Graham Hancock during the rollout of his Netflix shit parade, Ancient Apocalypse. That includes familiar faces like Flint Dibble and Milo Rossi, as well as Kaylee During of History with Kaylee, and a bunch of professional archaeologists who dabble in communication. He mouthed off to the board of the Society for American Archaeology and encouraged his brainwashed followers to leave scathing reviews for the books of legitimate scholars, as well as their profiles on RateMyProfessors.com. Dr. Bill Farley was review bombed, Milo Rossi quit Twitter because the harassment was so severe. Jimmy really became famous as the king of the pseudoarcheology troll army during this time. From this momentum, he made his way back onto Rogan on January 18th, 2023, this time with another douche nozzle named Ben Van Kerwick, who goes by Uncharted X, to talk about super mega hyper advanced ancient technology that definitely exists. Don't worry, it's way cooler than Graham's imaginary advanced technology that he backpedaled all the way back to the mere idea of agriculture during his debate with Flint that had yet to occur. In September 2023, Jimmy started posting about swastikas and Nazi shit. Flint called him out, so Jimmy started claiming that Flint was faking his cancer to avoid debating Graham on Rogan, and he encouraged his brainwashed flock to try and get Flint fired from his job. January 19th, 2024, he showed up on the podcast of Walking Foreskin Tim Pool alongside grifting psychopath Ben Davidson of Suspicious Observers, because cult leaders fear-mongering about a sun-induced apocalypse go with dumb stories about Atlantis like peas and carrots, right? Ben's really been amping up his operations lately after his wife left him and took the kids and got a restraining order against him, and then he got raided by the police after he publicly threatened a terrorist attack in Denver. So who knows, maybe some more content on Ben is finally in order. But for now, let's focus on wee little Jimmy. Around May of 2024, Jimbo started peddling Göbekli Tepe conspiracy theories in high volume on Twitter. Then he showed up on InfoWars to talk about it on July 7th. Shortly after, on July 26th, he showed up on One America Network with Chris Boyle, another InfoWars appearance on August 15th, then back to Rogan with Dan Richards on November 20th. We hit this one in the Graham Hancock video. Then to Danny Jones on February 3rd of this year, which we also touched on, and then he found himself on Piers Morgan this summer alongside Dan the Bridge Troll to whine about Zahi Hawass. So those are the major appearances, which means a few among these will be the primary focus of this video. But he also has his own garbage channel called Bright Insight, where he is neither bright nor insightful, so we have to talk about that too. His very first video was posted on October 12th, 2016, and it's about Göbekli Tepe. This one is fun to watch because you can see how he started out mimicking Graham Hancock. Clean-cut, boring lecture style with salacious fabricated details sprinkled throughout. Let's get some snippets from back in the day for funsies.
Hey everybody, this is Jimmy with Bright Insight. Today I'm going to talk with you about Göbekli Tepe. Bottom line is that this is 100% definitive proof that not only is the history of human civilization far older than what we were taught in school and what is actively still being taught at the public schools and universities, that it is also definitive evidence that there is some sort of lost ancient high technology or machinery that was utilized.
Yep, this is the narrative that permeates all of the bullshit from the pseudoarcheology cult. In case you missed my archaeology tutorials, Göbekli Tepe is a site in Turkey from ballpark 9000 BCE, which was intriguing upon its discovery because we thought that agriculture was a prerequisite for humans to build structures like this. But this site was made by hunter-gatherers, as there is no sign of agriculture, which was beginning to be developed elsewhere roughly around that time period. It's a really cool site, given that it's the oldest known megalithic site, and it caused us to revise one detail of our timeline. But that's it. That's the nature of science and discovery. This whole song and dance about it breaking archaeology or revising the entirety of world history is totally idiotic. We discovered a thing, and now we know more things. Frauds like Jimmy make claims like definitive evidence of lost ancient high technology without even an ounce of actual evidence. And they also pretend that this site is not discussed in undergraduate archaeology curricula, which you have to be a complete moron to believe. Archaeologists excavate this site, publish research about it, and teach their students about it, just like anything else in the field. This whole angle of, I have secret knowledge that the woke indoctrination camps won't teach you, is central to the grift. There is nothing that Jimmy knows about this site that isn't common knowledge. If you want to become a scholar of this or any other site, go study archaeology at a university under professors who actually understand the field, not clueless asshats like Jimmy.
12,000 years ago. Yes, that's right, 12,000 years ago, as they were able to carbon date from pottery and other artifacts that were located in and around the site.
Nope, you can't carbon date pottery. It's inorganic. You need organic remains. It's right there in the name. Carbon dating. Always nice to see frauds exposing their profound incompetence within the first minute of their first YouTube video.
Now, to put that in perspective, what is currently being taught in school about ancient Egypt is that the pyramids are 4,500 years old. Now, I have another video about that, which, look, there's significant evidence that, the ruins around ancient Egypt are significantly older than what we've been taught.
Wow, what a bombshell. It's funny because you just cited carbon dating as a reliable method of dating objects, and the mortar between the stones of the pyramids consistently carbon dates to exactly the age that is corroborated by the historical timeline of the Old Kingdom. So your significant evidence must be pretty profound to be able to overturn all that. Want to draft it up and submit it to a journal so that real archaeologists can check it out? No? Gee, I wonder why.
And guess what? It's located in Turkey, and just a few years ago, Turkey removed all of their funding for the excavation, and this thing hasn't been touched in a few years, and they're only 5%, they've only excavated 5% of it, as validated by ground-penetrating radar.
Blatantly regurgitating lies from Graham Hancock's Magicians of the Gods here. You can see why all these bozos worship Graham. They can just recycle his grift as a starter kit for their own. No, Jimbo, excavation was never shut down. It's been consistently excavated since its discovery, slowly and selectively, for reasons of safety and preservation. I know you'd love to run in there with some sticks of dynamite, and that's exactly why morons like you aren't allowed to do that. Some areas will require more advanced excavation techniques than are available currently. This shit is super old, remember? Then it's several more minutes of regurgitating lies from Graham. Everything is aligned with the stars in a crazy precise manner. No, it isn't. Structures have been deliberately buried. No, they haven't. It points to a global cataclysm. No, it doesn't. I'm willing to entertain the possibility that way back in 2016, Jimmy was genuinely just an idiot who fell for Graham's bullshit and was naively recycling it in his own lame PowerPoint presentation. But after a decade of this grift and never changing his tune 1 inch, you'd better believe he is fully aware by now that everything he says is a blatant lie.
Guys, the evidence is right in front of us that they obviously had some sort of amazing technology that was at least on par with what we have today, or maybe more advanced. We don't know.
Right, they had the same capacity for engineering and architecture that we have today, or even more. Fuck the Burj Khalifa, Panama Canal, Hoover Dam, Golden Gate Bridge, so many long underwater tunnels, and the International Space Station. That shit is weak as fuck. These guys carved pictures of animals on some rocks. Inconceivable.
What we were taught is not accurate. What is currently being taught to our children and as well as people at the university level is not accurate. Why is that? Why is it that the Turkish government has prevented any excavations for the last few years? Why? Guys, hello, wake up. We have the evidence right in front of us, and it's time that these questions start getting answered as far as why is the excavations not currently going on, right? Anyways, this is Jimmy. I'm Bright Insight. Be blessed, all.
Yeah, we're awake, champ. Everything you're saying is total bullshit. Small children are not taught this subject in general. High school kids learn about it briefly in a world history or ancient civ class. Undergraduates in archaeology programs are obviously learning all about it, and they know 1,000 times more than you do. Here's an entire course at Oxford centered on this one site. Look, it even says that the site is rewriting prehistory, and there are hundreds more. Anything that comes out of Jimmy's dumb mouth about this place is either a lie or utterly trivial knowledge that anyone could find in a 10-second Google search. And again, excavation is consistent and ongoing. This is basically what all of his content is like, vaguely gesturing at a cool site, making up a bunch of bullshit, and then peppering in fantasies about global cataclysms or Nikola Tesla, or whatever will get his idiot followers' dicks hard. Textbooks have been debunked. Scientists are censoring new discoveries. In reality, when new discoveries revise existing knowledge, new editions of textbooks are amended to reflect the new information, just like with any other field of science. And the idea that archaeologists are hiding discoveries that would make them more successful is fucking idiotic. But this is the currency that assholes like Jimmy deal in. It doesn't have to make an ounce of sense. It just has to make people feel like they're smarter than experts. Then came the Atlantis bullshit.
Not only did the lost city of Atlantis actually exist, but its true location has been hiding in plain sight for thousands of years.
Big smile, Jimmy. Sell those used cars. This was his first Atlantis video from 2018. There were 2 others to round out the trilogy. This one came out a few weeks later.
In my previous video, I connected the dots on several truly remarkable similarities between Plato's description of the lost city of Atlantis to that of the mysterious Rekhat structure, also known as the Eye of the Sahara, which is located in a remote region of the Western Sahara Desert in Mauritania.
Just an all-American dude dropping truth bombs about ancient civilizations. Plato famously spent his summers in the Sahara Desert, so he would know the most about this awesome civilization, which totally isn't just a natural geological feature at all. That's why Plato told us all about Atlantis, which was a real place, and definitely not just a fictional allegory to vividly convey the dangers of decadence and moral decay. Same with Plato's cave. That wasn't an allegory either. It was a real cave where real people were trapped as hostages, and they were looking at shadows to figure out what was outside the cave. That's what's funny about Plato. Everyone thinks he was this brilliant philosopher with all these profound insights. He wasn't. He was just some guy talking about a cave in his backyard and some weird city he found. Anyway, there were these three, and then a video from 2022 that he strategically dropped right after his first Rogan appearance to capitalize on the new eyeballs from the Rogan bump.
However, I disagree and would argue that the true measurements would surely have been lost in translation over the course of some 12,000 years and through the numerous changes of language that would have occurred during the passing of that prolonged time. I mean, it's not like anyone today speaks Latin, which was once a common language.
Yes, Jimmy, nobody speaks Latin. You totally can't learn to speak fluent Latin in college or even high school from classical language scholars who objectively speak Latin precisely as the ancients did, and which was not what Plato spoke anyway. I guess all my Latin tutorials are just hot gibberish, huh? As you can probably imagine, his videos are full of dumb moments like this, but it's way more fun to comb through Rogan episodes than these stuffy presentations, so that we can make fun of Joe as well. And Jimmy's first Rogan episode was all about this Atlantis crap anyway, so let's mine it for funny bits.
And the mysteries that come. The first video I think I saw of you was this video of these concentric circles in Africa that are remarkably similar to descriptions of Atlantis.
The Richat structure.
Yeah, and then I started reading up on it, and I'm like, this is pretty wild. And then I got into your whole YouTube page, which is called Bright Insight, and it's really excellent. So first, before we can get started, how did you get interested in this subject?
Well, going back to the 6th grade, that was when I fell in love with the Egyptians.
Up there.
Bring that sucker up to you?
There you go.
How's that sound?
Perfect.
I've always had a fascination for the ancients. Growing up in school, most topics bored the hell out of me. In math, I'd be like counting the ceiling tiles more than I'd be counting numbers. But something like that, the ancients, science, history, I always thought was fun. But I never would have thought that I would grow up to make a career out of it.
I would think that most grifting frauds don't grow up imagining that they'll be grifting frauds for a living, but then they reach a certain age without having achieved anything, and they realize that lying on the internet can bring them all the wealth and fame they believe they deserve without any of the hard work of becoming an actual expert. So they just fall into that pretty naturally. Fortunately, people like Joe exist who have convinced themselves that they're genuinely interested in scholarly pursuits instead of the reality of the matter, that they just like stories that make them feel smart and special. And that's what the grifter provides, so it's a beautiful symbiosis.
I was like, well, I'd heard people were on YouTube and making money, and I'm like, I could teach anything on there. And so I started shotgunning it. I started making videos on all kinds of different topics, all kinds of crazy stuff. Joe, if you saw my earliest stuff, I mean, I've deleted more than half my videos. I was saying all kinds of woo-woo.
Well, you had to learn, right? You have to learn how to do it right.
Yeah.
But YouTube has a lot of dumb shit on it. Like, undeniably.
Yes, Joe, YouTube does have a lot of dumb shit on it, and you seem to have a knack for falling for literally all of it and inviting every last one of the assholes who make the dumb shit on your dumb show to amplify their reach. As for Jimmy, he says he deleted a bunch of early content full of woo-woo, and looking at the pile of turds he kept on there, it's terrifying to imagine what he deleted.
So, the Atlantis one.
Yeah, the Richat structure. I was wondering if you saw those videos, Joe.
Yeah, no, that was a big one that I saw because I've been fascinated by the concept of Atlantis. Ever since I had these conversations with Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock about the Younger Dryas impact theory and this concept that somewhere in the roughly around 11,000, 12,000 years ago, we were hit by a series of comets. And it's pretty evident that that's a fact. If you do the core samples of the Earth, they find this nuclear glass all over the Earth that exists in that time period. and it seems like something happened that reset civilization.
No, it doesn't seem that way. That's a story that you fell for, which was peddled to you by the frauds you just listed. There are no large synchronous craters that are indicative of such an event. All the glass and any other substance you might reference have been linked to natural terrestrial processes, also with highly inconsistent dating. And there is no evidence of any of the imaginary civilizations that are supposed to have been obliterated by such an event. In reality, the last ice age ended, and human civilization slowly began to flourish, precisely as is explained in all the textbooks and university curricula you pretend are fake news, just because they don't contain the magical beings and towers and potions that you should be getting from fucking Lord of the Rings.
And there's very little evidence of advanced civilizations before that up until recently, up until the last couple of decades. They started uncovering things like Göbekli Tepe and all these other structures that are clearly from more than 12,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. And they're really complex and really large with enormous stones. And it's sort of caused people to rethink the history of the Earth and the history of human civilizations.
No, it isn't clearly more than 12,000 years old, since it's very clearly at maximum not quite even that old. And it isn't clearly from before any kind of catastrophic event, since such an event never happened. And it wasn't an advanced civilization. It doesn't hold a candle to Sumer or Babylon or Egypt. It was hunter-gatherers exhibiting more complex behavior than previously thought. That's it.
And Atlantis has always been the big one. That has been the one that everybody talked about, was this incredibly advanced civilization, and no one can figure out where it is.
Right.
Or if it was real.
No, we're quite immaculately confident it isn't real, Joe, because it's a fucking story. You're like an idiot running face first into brick walls at every train station in London because someone told you that's how to get to Hogwarts. But as long as people keep feeding you Atlantis stories, you'll keep listening. So let's hear Jimmy's.
I think that Atlantis, because surely that wouldn't have been necessarily the name just through like the change of language, over, let's say, 12, 13,000 years ago, which would be the time frame. So, like, surely there would be several different changes of language, but I think it represented a civilization that was doing great things. They were more global than what many people think would be possible. Atlantis was said to be a kingdom made up of, or an empire, made up of 10 kingdoms. And then there was the lost city of Atlantis, which was the capital, which was said to be made up of concentric circles, 2 of water, 3 of land, and essentially that they were obliterated by a cataclysm.
Yeah, we've heard this already. The name doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't exist. Talking about 10 kingdoms just makes the whole story even more ridiculous, since none of those exist either. Also, I love the whole vague civilization doing great things rhetoric. He's clearly been studying creative writing under Donald Trump.
Getting involved and doing great things. What about eggs?
The President of the United States, everybody. Anyway, Jimbo, can you please explain why anybody would actually entertain the idea that Atlantis is a real place?
As passed down by Plato, although it's worth mentioning that Plato got the story of Atlantis from Solon, who was his uncle separated by 6 generations. But what most people don't realize is that Solon had traveled to Egypt, and so it's the ancient Egyptians is where that tale comes from.
Cool. So Plato heard a story from other people, and that's how we know it's a real place and not a story. Can't argue with that logic. Funny how absolutely nobody else ever wrote down anything about it anywhere ever, huh? Can we please give this shit a rest? Plato made it up. It's overt political allegory. Athens is the ideal city, and Atlantis is the opponent that represents hubris, corruption, and moral decay, which lost its divine favor and sank into the ocean in a single day and night. It's a fucking story for conveying a lesson to the reader. A story. Do you know what a story is, Jimmy? When you read Aesop's fables as a kid, like the one about the ants and the grasshopper, did you take from that the lesson that you should work hard and prepare in advance for the tough winter? Or did you go, holy shit, ants and grasshoppers can talk? Use your fucking brain.
Which makes it even more bizarre because I would argue that the most spectacular ancient civilization is the Egyptians. I mean, no disrespect to the Romans.
Hard to deny.
Right? I mean, let me just say, because I want to, on this podcast, encourage people to travel to Egypt. Joe, you got to go.
Yes, Jimmy wants to encourage everyone to go to Egypt, preferably with him on one of his overpriced trips. Nice plug, jackass.
I really want to. A friend of mine just went, and she got back, and she was telling me incredible things about it. Jamie, will you pull up the photos of these concentric circles? Tell him.
Yeah, the Richat, R-I-C-H-A-T. It's worth mentioning
he's
that.
got it already here.
Yeah, in the first couple, I just want to say it's Richat. I used to call it Ricot. I was mispronouncing it.
I love how Joe sniffs out the plug and immediately changes the subject. For a gullible moron, he can sometimes surprise you. It's also fun to hear Jimmy admit that he was on YouTube making videos and pretending to be an expert on these sites when he couldn't even pronounce them correctly.
So let me say there's absolute doubt. Even I am not 100% certain. I'm not even 100% certain Atlantis existed. What I am certain is that humans were doing spectacular things in a cataclysmic event happened called the Younger Dryas and reset something for somebody.
Even Jimmy, the super mega supreme expert on this site he recently learned how to pronounce properly, isn't 100% certain that it's Atlantis. But he is 100% certain about some other thing that definitely didn't happen, so that should let you know what his certainty is worth.
Is there a natural explanation for
Yes.
this formation?
Yes. So let me say that it is considered to be mysterious. They're not 100% certain of it. However, the consensus is that it was a volcanic dome that had risen and collapsed multiple times, like 100 million years ago, allegedly. I say allegedly. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that. I'm just saying I would like to know where sometimes they get these figures from. Like, explain to me why it was 100 million years ago and not 99 or 98, because here we are talking about how crazy things changed in just the last 12, 13,000 years. So when they throw around these numbers, 1 million years in itself is an incredibly long period of time. But
I love the use of the word allegedly when describing science he doesn't understand. OMG, you guys, how do scientists figure stuff out? Instead of learning something, I'll just project my ignorance onto the entire body of science and pretend that makes all of our knowledge uncertain. It's called radiometric dating, dumbass. Geologists are scientists who do empirical science to determine a two-stage igneous history with intrusions around 200 million years ago and subsequent uplift 100 million years ago. Why not 99 million? Well, there's a margin of error, so call it 99 million if you want. Nobody gives a shit. But the point is that it's a very old natural formation, not a deliberately engineered structure. Archaeological finds indicate the presence of Homo erectus around 2 million years ago, and radiocarbon dating shows freshwater sediments between 15,000 and 8,000 years ago, when the region was greener and had rivers and lakes. Hunter-gatherers have lived there, but there was no sprawling, futuristic metropolis. Sorry, you'd think that having precisely 0 remains of a complex society would be enough to convince most people that no such complex society existed. But not Jimmy.
Describe what we're looking at here.
okay, so what you're looking at is approximately 250 miles inland in the total barren desert of Mauritania, Africa. So
But
the Western
this image
Sahara.
looks like, why is it blue?
That's just showing you
What it used to look like?
No, this is what it looks like right now through, I forgot what you call this type of animation, but it's a satellite imagery that they enhanced in order for you to see the difference in elevation and the actual structure to itself.
Okay, so like if there was water in this area, you would see it this way, that it would be these concentric circles that are raised above the water, and then the water would be inside of it like that.
Well, just to clarify, this particular image, no, this is not trying to represent water. So that blue is actually picking up on salt. So
Salt, all that was salt. But I mean, it used to be underwater, right? It's salt because it was underwater.
that's what I believe, and that's what makes the most sense to me. Others will disagree, and let me tell you why. It is currently 1,300 feet above sea level. It's 250 miles inland. And so some people say this was never under the ocean, at least not for the last tens of millions of years, is what the scientists claim.
Salt from ocean, so anywhere there's salt, there was ocean. Me no need learn geology, salt only can be from ocean. Ooga booga. Hey moron, it was an intrusion. I know that's a big word for you. It means that magma got pushed up from below to form a dome, which uplifted layers of sedimentary rock that included ancient marine sediments rich in salt. Wind and water eroded the softer layers over millions of years to reveal the harder sandstone and quartzite layers, and the depressions in between with salt deposits and evaporites. This is what happens when you try to talk about geology without knowing literally anything about geology.
The circles themselves is about 14 and a half miles across. However, if you go the complete shebang, the whole circle itself is just shy of 30 miles.
So the whole thing is 30 miles, which would be like the size of a city.
Right. Well, keep in mind the outer ring would have been water, so that wouldn't have necessarily counted. But some people will say that this is too big according to Plato's description. And let me just say that I'm like, well, hold on a second. I don't think that we should consider that because of loss of translation, that we should consider the measurements a key detail. The question becomes, is it big enough to be a city with possibly millions of people? Because the way it was described is that it was a city that was said to be busy all day, all night, rich in trade, with languages spoken from all over. So I'm like, okay, that would imply millions of people. I mean, if a city's busy all day and all night, I think of large metropolitan areas like New York, Chicago, London, whatever. And so if this was indeed an ancient or a site of an ancient civilization, well, then it would have, I mean, they're obviously not going to have skyscrapers, so it would have to be an area big enough to sustain that many people, and the Richat structure certainly does.
This is hilarious. His whole thing is that this site fits so super ultra perfectly with what Plato said, but then he always backtracks and says, who cares about the numbers? You can't have it both ways, Chief. And the fucking extrapolation. Plato said it was busy all day and all night with lots of trade and languages. Therefore, it had to have millions of people just like New York or Chicago, obviously. I wonder what kind of flimsy biodegradable buildings they made in this incredible metropolis so as to not leave behind any evidence of its existence whatsoever.
And so the idea would be that this would lead out to the ocean and that these circles would be where the water is, and then the ridges would be where the structures are, where the houses and the buildings are.
And people will say, well, where is that stuff now? I'm like, well, look at it. It got
those
obliterated.
Those people should shut the fuck.
Everybody using basic logic to demolish my stupid stories should shut the fuck up. How dare they remind me that there is absolutely nothing physical there to indicate that any such civilization existed. Way to be open-minded, Joe. Real man of science.
Well,
but if you just look at what's going on with the sand and those clear water erosion marks on the sand, but that also could be wind, right? Couldn't the way that the ripples in that sand, couldn't that be wind?
Both. However, just to clarify,
is that sand that is where the cursor's at right there?
Yes, that's all sand. However, it's also actually go to the right where it says layers. Jamie, can you scroll in right there? Because that will show you the ripples more. So it's a combination of sand and rock.
You mean to the
left?
Right
left? There. That's what I'm talking about. Those are giant ripples. And I'm quoting. Let me just say, I'm quoting Randall Carlson, who I consider to be an expert on geological formations. And so, yeah.
Right, but isn't that what wind-driven sand looks like? If you go to dunes look like that.
Yeah, and undoubtedly.
But hold on, this is sand, right?
Yes, well, it's a combination, rock and sand in between.
Right, but this is like what it would look like if wind-driven sand and rock underneath it.
Right, so what the implication is that it was blasted by water, and then after that, the wind has done its thing and moved the sand all over it and in between.
Psychologists could study this shit for decades. Joe goes from clear water erosion to acknowledging that wind does this shit all the time within a single breath. And then he has to tell that to Jimmy, who just comes back with, it got blasted by water first, because reasons. For everyone at home, yes, wind makes huge sand dunes. It is responsible for all of the features these morons are looking at. No water necessary.
So Plato so this is 600 BC, and Plato said that it happened 9,000 years earlier, so that would be 11,600 years ago, which coincides with the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe, which makes it so compelling. To me, that is actual scientific evidence that indicates that Atlantis actually existed. Because it's very specific.
It is very specific, but it's not scientific, right? It's like there's no real evidence.
It's pretty sad when even Joe Rogan has to tell you that there's no scientific evidence for what you're saying. Plato told a story that aligns with a thing that definitely didn't happen, therefore this thing must be Atlantis. Who falls for this shit?
But then the other thing is like, how much would be left? You know, if you ever seen those photographs of Detroit, where you see houses that are being consumed by trees.
Yeah.
And there's some great ones in Russia as well, where they have these photographers have taken to going into these abandoned cities and watching the nature, like watching trees and the greenery consume these houses. Yeah, so it's one from 2009, and then you see it from 2013. It's basically consuming that house. So in 2009, you just have a house in between two houses. In 2013, the house is abandoned and it's being consumed by trees.
Cool, there's a tree in the house. This is a really compelling angle and everything, Joe, but how long would it take for nature to take over Detroit to the point where there is literally no trace of Detroit anymore? Not a single fragment of any building, not a single artifact, nothing. I'll give you a hint, 12,000 years ain't fucking enough.
There was a discovery a handful of years ago of this papyrus that had, it was essentially a receipt for limestone blocks that were brought up the Nile and delivered to Giza. And many people have said, there was such clickbait fraud headlines about it saying, papyrus describing how they built the pyramids. That is the biggest clickbait nonsense, because if you actually look at what was detailed on it, it doesn't say anything. It doesn't use the word pyramid. It doesn't say what they were used for. All it says is horizon of Khufu. And so what some people interpret that to mean is that the alleged pharaoh who built the Great Pyramid, his name was Khufu, and that horizon of Khufu essentially could indicate, his resting place, as in horizon being to the west, where you go when you die. That's all that thing says. And it was already known, Joe, that some of the blocks were brought to Giza.
Yes, anything that debunks his dumb stories is clickbait fraud, unlike the fraudulent clickbait he produces. In reality, this papyrus that was found 15 years ago recorded a worker moving stones for the Great Pyramid. The name Horizon of Khufu has the pyramid designator in its hieroglyph. This papyrus records trips by boat from the Tura limestone quarries to Giza, delivering casing stones for the pyramid. Frauds like Jimmy have to have rebuttals ready for anything that proves him wrong, and this was a pretty pathetic attempt at brushing aside this papyrus, which basically amounts to nuh-uh.
Because each pyramid, and keep in mind, there's more like something like 118 pyramids in Egypt. A lot of people don't realize that. They just think of the three big ones in Giza. But all of these, if they were said to be tombs for the pharaohs, which I don't agree with, and for a variety of reasons.
Yes, the old pyramids weren't actually tombs song and dance. Despite us having found thousands of sarcophagi and mummies and burial artifacts and all the other stuff that makes it absolutely conclusive that they were definitely tombs.
It's a mystery. Like, they don't, because there's a few things people need to know, is that nowhere in all the tens of thousands of hieroglyphs found throughout ancient Egypt, not one single one of them shows anything about them cutting stone, nor does it show anything depicting the construction of a pyramid.
Nope. There are plenty of images of Egyptians drilling stone vases. There's even a depiction of a construction ramp for a pyramid in a wall painting. This jerk is either lying or has no fucking idea what he's talking about. Take your pick.
All this, I call it the mainstream, the stuff you read about in the textbooks, which most of the documentaries and all this stuff, which is pyramids built to be tombs. This was all developed in modern times. There's absolutely nothing from the ancient Egyptians in any type of glyph that depicts, there's only a couple examples of pyramids, but it's burial sites right next to them. It's very primitive, and it's like, that's it. There's nothing else showing anything about it. There's nothing depicting that pharaohs or this is the place where they were burying kings. And it's worth mentioning that when you go through inside these pyramids of Giza, which are the most impressive, although the Red Pyramid and Bent Pyramid are unbelievably impressive, there's not one single glyph in any of them whatsoever. There was never a mummy found in any Egyptian pyramid ever. Now, that doesn't mean they weren't stolen and looted. That's possible. But quite literally, the only reason why we are told this stuff is because that was the theory developed by these men that went in there, in the late 1800s and said, I believe these must have been for the pharaohs. That makes sense.
So there's no hieroglyphs that depict it as the
Zero.
Zero.
Nope. Pyramid texts are found in burial chambers of the Old Kingdom pyramids and are explicitly funerary. Hieroglyphs do indeed exist in pyramids, and mummies have indeed been found in pyramids, just not the most famous ones due to looting. Merenre, Neferefre, Djedkare Isesi, Teti, Djoser, Unas, Pepi I, remains of these kings were found in pyramids. And even if that weren't true, the very clear burial chambers with sarcophagi are evidence enough on their own. They were tombs. They were tombs. They were tombs. When you say something so objectively false as emphatically as you just did, you are announcing to the world that you're a pointless asshat who should never be taken seriously ever. Ever. Ever.
Ever.
Ever.
Ever.
Ever.
So it's all just one group of people had one theory, and that theory just stuck around.
100%. And this is the stuff like, they didn't teach me that in school, Joe. I didn't ever heard any of this. I was told these were built to be tombs for the pharaohs.
How much did you learn about Egypt in school?
Not much, because it's like
Yeah,
hardly
it's
like
not-
6th grade, right?
Yeah, it's not something they teach a lot.
Well,
But
right,
if you
but
wanted
if-
to really study it, you really have to get. I mean, it's
But in college
incredibly
today,
complicated subject.
Jimmy, are you sure you didn't get taught stuff about Egypt, or were you busy being a slacker burnout? Most high school students take a World Civ class and spend several weeks on Egypt. Where were you? Out sick? Suspended, perhaps?
right? But all right, so people that go to school for this learn history and learn
Yeah.
archaeology, and the ones that are taught about Egyptology,
Yeah.
that's what they're taught.
And not only that, there was a violent reaction to the Robert Schoch podcast that I had by some Egyptologists that mocked him and reached out and said they wanted to come on and refute what he was saying. And it was interesting to watch their reaction to a geologist talking about erosion.
Yeah, in college, people learn facts, like all the ones that disprove frauds like Jimmy and Schoch. Legitimate scholars tend to get annoyed when lying frauds are platformed to spread their lies and polarize the public against real experts. You guys wouldn't understand that since you've never lifted a finger to actually learn anything.
All right, so one thing I explain to people is that there's something happening and has been happening in the scientific and academic community. It's the same thing we see in politics, Joe. It's a tribalism. People, it's no different than religion.
Yeah.
You were taught something, you believe it,
Not
you've
just
invested.
that, you're teaching it.
Oh yeah, handing
That's
out.
the big one is the teaching it. It's not you were taught, because I think when people have been taught things, they're willing to adjust. But when they've spent decades as the expert explaining very carefully how it happened and what we know and celebrating all these people that have done this great work and shown us, how these ancients did these things, and then it turns out that they're completely wrong. Well, you've been fucking kids over with shitty education for decades. You don't want to admit it.
It wouldn't be a Joe Rogan episode without Joe vomiting up this tired old narrative. Science is actually a religion, and stupid college professors are wrong and dumb about everything, but they won't admit it because grant money, blah, blah, blah. It's just the most pathetic thing imaginable. Hey guys, people who study the sciences in college don't just take dictation and memorize things. They do science. They run chemical reactions. They do physics experiments. They dissect animals. They go on archaeological excavations. Joe, you're the dumb fuck armchair expert who blindly believes the frauds on the internet who brainwash you, like this jerk sitting across from you right now. You're just too stupid to see it. And pretending that everything college students learn is wrong is just a pathetic coping mechanism for people who are too dumb and lazy to get a college education.
But the thing about history is, of course you're going to be wrong. I mean, what they should do is they should say, this is what we thought. So for years we were teaching this because that's what, as far as we knew, that was correct. Now we know differently. And this is what's amazing about archaeology. This is what's amazing about history. But they don't want to do that.
Well,
Because then they would have to get rid of those books.
That's exactly what they do, dumbass. That's how literally every field of science works. Do you think they still teach physics courses out of Newton's Principia? Every textbook has a new edition every couple of years, specifically for the purpose of updating outdated information. College kids studying archaeology learn about Göbekli Tepe and whatever the fuck else you're whining about, unless it's not real information and just dumb stories you fell for on the internet. You have no idea what's happening at any university in the world because you're a willfully ignorant tool.
all right, so they'd have to get rid of the books, but there's other implications too, which is money. Scientists and a lot of these people are making big bucks writing textbooks, handing
Yeah.
out degrees, doing documentary opportunities, all kinds of stuff. So they've made a complete livelihood on something that is, let's say, partially incorrect. I'm not saying they're wrong about everything.
Right.
But so the implication is that there's big money around. Some of these people they have done very well for themselves.
Yeah.
And so to be wrong, it's like, oh shit.
People don't like being wrong about anything.
Fuck no.
Yeah, it's a weird part about being a person is that we connect our ideas with our value as a person.
This is the most pathetic reversal of reality imaginable. Scientists are making big bucks, you guys. The average salary of an archaeologist is $70K. Jimmy makes way more than that pretending to be an archaeologist on the internet, and Joe makes more than that with every single episode of his shit podcast where he does the exact thing he's accusing scientists of doing, refusing to admit that he's wrong about every aspect of his entire pathetic identity. These jackasses are whining about all the imaginary money in science, while Joe has a net worth larger than the GDP of some small nations, and he earns it almost exclusively by spreading lies on the internet. The irony here is so thick you could cut it with a knife.
You know, this goes back, I like to make the comparison, too, to Galileo. They were going to torture him to death. He had actual definitive evidence that we were rotating around the sun and not the other way around, and they were like, no. And they're going to, Joe, they put him on house arrest. He had to recant everything. Or else.
Shut the fuck up with your Galileo bullshit. Why does every single worthless fraud have to reference Galileo every day of their goddamn lives? He's not even getting it right. We don't rotate around the sun, we orbit the sun. Galileo wasn't tortured, he was just on house arrest. He wasn't the first to propose or even empirically substantiate heliocentrism, and he was persecuted by the fucking Catholic Church, not the scientific community. Every time some loser fraud brings up Galileo in an attempt to highlight the alleged closed-mindedness of the scientific community, they should be slapped in the face for 11 hours and have all of their podcasting equipment confiscated. I'm so tired of this shit.
So this book was pretty much little known, but if you literally Google or you could bring it, well, it used to come up at the top of Google, but now you got to go to DuckDuckGo, or you can go to CIA.gov.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
When you see how Google curates information, when you go to Google things.
Type Bright Insight. Jimmy no longer comes up on there, and a few pages in. I'm offended.
Why do you think they're hiding you? Are they scared that you're going to tell the truth?
Yes, Google is hiding Jimmy because his truth is just too much for the man to handle. Jesus fucking Christ. If you Google Bright Insight, his channel comes up first, and then other stuff that also has that name, since it's a boring and not at all creative name, and other people have used it for various businesses. This perpetual conspiratorial victim complex is just part of the territory with these jerks. Anyway, they talk a lot about the CIA as though that somehow validates these dumb stories. Then it's about rich people buying mummies, which earlier he pretended aren't real. Then he finds a way to work Big Pharma into the conspiracy, because why the fuck not? It's all too stupid to entertain, so let's move on to the next one. Jimmy's next Rogan appearance was the one with Ben Van Kerwick, but I'm pretty sure this dork will get his own video pretty soon, since he's more popular than Jimmy at this point, and also quite obnoxious. So let's save most of this episode for a future video. But here are just a couple little tidbits where Jimmy is being an idiot.
Every article I ever read on geomagnetic pole shifts, they go out of their way to say, don't worry, it's fine. And I'm like, but yet the evidence shows that it's accelerating. Back in just the 1990s, it was traveling, the North Pole was transitioning at 10 miles a year. Now it's at 40 or almost 40 miles. It's accelerating. And then the Adam and Eve story, it talks about, or actually, no, not the Adam and Eve story. There was a documentary on Nova years ago that the evidence shows that when they've studied all the other volcanic rock for prior known pole shifts, because keep in mind, there's hundreds that are known. This has happened throughout millions and millions of years. This is mainstream science. The poles do flip. But it's not that the Earth flips over. It's that the inside core does, and so your magnetic compass will flip. Like
what causes it?
So whatever that molten core is, it does a shift inside. It allegedly happens in cycles.
Jesus Christ. Wouldn't it be nice if this show was just Joe entering simple questions into Google and learning things on his own, instead of listening to him react to some asshat fumble everything he tries to talk about? Don't worry, guys. Jimmy says that when the magnetic poles flip, it's not because the whole planet flips over. I know you were all worried about that, since that's the most logical conclusion. That in order for the poles to flip, the entire planet will flip onto the other side, which, by the way, would not even constitute a pole flip. And no, Jimbo, the core also is not flipping upside down, or whatever the fuck you said. There's a geodynamo. Convection occurs in the molten core due to Earth's rotation. Since it's mostly iron and nickel, the motion of this material generates electric currents, which in turn create Earth's magnetic field. The flow isn't flawlessly stable, so variations in its pattern can disrupt the main dipole field, which causes it to weaken and then reverse. Currently, the magnetic North Pole is by the geographic South Pole, and magnetic South is by geographic North. It'll happen again, maybe soon, and the main ramification will be compasses pointing south instead. That's it. Nothing is accelerating, and it takes centuries for the flip to occur. The magnetic poles are moving, just as they always do. There is no mechanistic basis for presuming anything catastrophic because of a flip, and identifying other pole flips in the geological record does not in any way correlate with any mass extinction events or catastrophes or anything of the sort.
You want to see something else? President Trump said it too.
What did he say?
I have the video on my laptop. It's only 30 seconds long. If you YouTube Donald Trump on climate scientists, basically they were talking about global warming, and he basically interrupts and says, "It's going to cool first, though, isn't it?" And the scientist is like, "Oh, that's not what the evidence shows." And he kind of laughs. He goes, "I'm not so sure you know that." And I'm like, of course he would know. People are like, "Oh, Donald Trump's anti-science, he's stupid." I'm like, he didn't just pull that out of his ass. He was saying
when
something.
he was the president?
Yes, this was just a few years ago. This is probably his last year of his term.
Wow, Trump is so smart for saying an objectively wrong thing. Average temperatures have been rising by 1/4 degree Celsius per decade since the 1980s. We are 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial temperatures, and once we're above 2 degrees, extreme weather patterns will be unfathomably severe. That's in about 20 years for anyone doing the math at home. Check out my debunk of Matt Ridley for way more information. So this little anecdote about Trump outsmarting the climate scientists is just beyond pathetic on so many levels. The first level is that it's wrong. We are not cooling. There is not any cooling happening, and there will not be any cooling happening. It's wrong, objectively. And the second level is the idea that even if it were true, that Trump, the science-illiterate moron with dementia, would be the one to say it, to put those stupid scientists in their place, as though he's out there gathering climate data that scientists don't have access to.
Jamie, you should Google the Khufu ship, because the largest vessel that's ever been found from ancient Egypt is
a canoe.
Basically. And now, and there's no other depictions. Now, I'm not suggesting that, no one's suggesting that this boat was used to tug and move around large stones. But it's worth mentioning that of all the descriptions that you see, or inscriptions, excuse me, this 140-foot long boat is the largest boat ever found.
That's a bullshit boat, too, by the way.
I've said it before, and I feel bad, but it's a shitbox in
Look
comparison.
at it. It is a total shitbox. It's such a bad design. Like, look at how low it has, very little depth in the water.
Joe's an expert on shipbuilding, apparently. Hey, morons, there's a depiction in Hatshepsut's temple of a giant barge moving obelisks weighing hundreds of tons. This is what happens when you play pretend expert without actually knowing anything about archaeology. You humiliate yourself.
But that's the point. The point that's significant in this is that is the largest boat that they've ever found. And my point is that if they're going to claim that they were moving, 100-ton stone blocks on barges, I just want to iterate that they've never found one, and there was no inscription that shows anything large enough that would have done it.
Really? Did you want to at least Google it before confidently making this objectively wrong assertion? No? Okay, moving right along.
He obviously felt very compelled to buy Twitter. I mean, $44 billion is a lot of goddamn money, and he overpaid for it. But it felt like there's a need to have some sort of an uncensored distribution of information, or at least ungovernment censored.
Yes, ungovernment censored, meaning he's the one doing all the censoring. That's why he bought it, genius, to control the dissemination of information and prop up false narratives that are commerce friendly. He is constantly censoring anything that is politically inconvenient to him, suspending accounts of journalists without basis, complying with government requests to remove content with a far greater frequency than previous management, especially as pertaining to pro-Palestine content. He prioritizes premium accounts, which amounts to people paying money for their content to be perceived as truthful, and he's been fined huge sums of money for promoting misleading information. Elon masks his intentions by just baselessly asserting that he did it for free speech, and brainwashed idiots like you believed him because you're stupid. He doesn't want free speech, and neither do you. You want your speech protected and anything inconvenient to your ideology quelled, because you want to spew your lies without any social ramifications.
So I'm 38 years old, and growing up, I remember back in the day, people could say whatever they wanted. Free speech was real. You're allowed to have it. Worst case scenario, people ridicule you. And everything was fine. And now we're entering this age where things are being called dangerous. Like ancient apocalypse. That's dangerous misinformation. It's like, no, the only thing dangerous is stopping people from having a voice.
Hey, dumbass, you can and do say whatever you want now, and people like me can shit all over you for it. Yay, free speech. Nobody is stopping anybody from having a voice. Free speech means you can't go to jail for the things you say, genius. It doesn't mean you can lie all over the internet and nobody's allowed to expose your lies. Nobody is suggesting Graham Hancock should go to jail for his shitty Ancient Apocalypse series. Archaeologists simply suggested that Netflix categorize it properly because calling it archaeology is a lie. It's fantasies for adult children. That's why people like me debunk the shit out of it, and you and Graham and everyone else in your shitty cult can throw a tantrum about it until the end of time. Free speech, right, asshole?
And it's a win-win for everybody. We'll learn something
They
new.
wouldn't engage. They wouldn't engage with you. I mean, that's one of the problems that Graham has with his detractors. They say they'll debate him, but then when he offers them to debate him, they scurry away and hide.
Well, Joe, about a year after you said this, Flint Dibble agreed to debate Graham, humiliated him for 4 hours straight right in front of you, and your reaction was to just baselessly claim that he's a liar on multiple episodes after that. Fuck off, Joe. You don't give a shit about facts. You don't give a shit about debate. You don't give a shit about reality. You care about the paycheck you get from maintaining this ecosystem of pseudoscience and lies that you've cultivated. You're a garbage person. Next, Jimmy went on InfoWars to spew complete horseshit about Göbekli Tepe. Let's check out some snippets.
Because if you study the site, it's incredibly sophisticated in nature. It would take an enormous amount of work and ingenuity and engineering capability to piece together. So it is complete nonsense to suggest that that some cavemen during their downtime, when they weren't fighting off mastodons and saber-toothed tigers, that they were like, well, hey, let's construct 200 pillars that may be celestial in organization, and that's just, this will be fun.
Starting off strong with a gigantic pile of stupid. Cavemen? What era are you even referring to, asshole? The hunter-gatherers who built the site weren't cavemen, since they didn't live in fucking caves. And sorry, do you have any idea where mastodons and saber-toothed tigers lived? In the Americas. Where is Göbekli Tepe? Turkey. You're dumber than rocks.
It dates to approximately 11,600 years old, which, to put that into perspective, that's closer to 6,000 years older than the Sumerians, which we were taught was the world's first civilization.
Right.
And so when this was discovered, it completely threw a wrench into the textbooks and what we thought we knew about human history. Now, again, it's not just the oldest. Like I said, it's the largest, and it's approximately 50 times larger than Stonehenge.
No, Jimbo, it didn't rewrite any textbooks. It's just a thing we discovered. You can't know about things and put them in textbooks before you discover them. And Göbekli Tepe does not qualify as a civilization. So whatever textbook you've never read that you think you're referencing is still correct anyway. Sumer is still the earliest civilization. The label of civilization requires permanent cities, agriculture-based surplus, and writing. You keep pretending that Göbekli Tepe is some unbelievably enormous site by comparing it to Stonehenge. Stonehenge is a solar calendar made of rocks. It's not a city. It's a profoundly disingenuous comparison. Sumer was a collection of enormous cities. It blows Göbekli Tepe out of the water both in terms of size and population, and you're a moron.
Approximately only 5% of it has been excavated. Now, this is something I had touched on in a video back in 2017, and I hadn't revisited the topic in some years because I'm like, okay, there's a tremendous amount of more excavations that needs to take place, so let me circle back to this in some time. And I had discovered, while recently doing some exploring into what updates have been made, and I was startled to find that 5% figure hadn't changed. So that led me down the path of wondering, well, what is the holdup? I don't understand. Why is there no measurable difference in excavations?
That figure is from the 90s, jackass. They've been excavating constantly, but media outlets never update the figure because that was cited once. Somebody Googles it and repeats it, and now you're here repeating it again like a moron. They're working on it.
For example, if you were to Google, who is funding Göbekli Tepe, you wouldn't have found what I came across. So to sum it up, there's a company called the Dogus Group. It sounds spelled like Dogus, D-O-G-U-S. And they are a conglomerate in Turkey that is comprised of approximately 250 companies in 7 industries, which includes tourism. And it turns out that the CEO of that company is a gentleman by the name of Ferit Sahang, who is a longtime member of the World Economic Forum. So I came across that and I was like, well, this is interesting. And then I come to find out that he had done a presentation at the annual World Economic Forum Summit in Davos back in January of 2016, where he announced a 20-year partnership was made with the Ministry of Tourism and antiquities of Turkey, where the Dogus group would become the, quote, sole partner of this megalithic site. They're in charge of all excavations and tourism management. And so since that time, they had invested between 2016 and 2018, $15 million into the installation of various infrastructure that would be used to enhance tourism. And in the process, they destroyed many ancient ruins in the process. They had literally brought in heavy equipment and concrete, put in asphalt roads, put in permanent walkways and roofing structures, which was quite literally all of it was built upon ancient ruins, as I established from an archaeologist that actually worked the site.
Yep, literally all of that is lies. They have absolutely nothing to do with excavations, just tourism presentation. He's referencing tourism infrastructure and then pulling claims about excavation straight out of his asshole. This is how you manufacture a conspiracy theory. WEF, World Economic Forum, big international money thing is keeping the site secret because big bad money reasons. Nobody destroyed any ruins, nobody built roads over ruins. He is not in contact with any archaeologist who works the site. It's lies, 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 and more lies.
And on top of it, in my video that I had made, I had shared that there was 4 different tree orchards that surround the site. And I proposed the question, which is, are there any ancient ruins underneath these orchards? Because the site covers 22 acres. It's exceptionally large. And come to find out through that same archaeologist confirmed that, yes, those orchards were literally planted over ancient ruins. Now, it's known that tree roots are destructive. I mean, in any municipal area in the city, they have to choose what type of trees they plant because the roots will destroy roads, underground electrical, sewers, basements. So this story just gets more and more wild as we go.
Yes, your lies get more and more wild as we go. There's just nothing to even say here. It's a blind assertion he makes with zero evidence. That's it.
And many have suggested that this could be a relic of Noah from the Bible coming out of the ark, because if you look at Genesis 8:20, he discusses that he brought the animals out and he built an altar and made a sacrifice of the clean animals, including birds. And these pillars all seemingly depict that. Now, that's conjecture. I'm not certain that that's what that's depicting, but it's a question, and it's of significant historical as well as religious context.
Yes, pander to fundamentalist religious nutjobs. They're already in a cult, so they're more likely to join yours as well. Noah didn't exist. There was no ark. There was no great flood. You just sound like a lunatic.
Are they reburying some? I thought I read somewhere that they'd uncovered certain things and then reburied it. Is that true, or was that just rumor?
No, that's correct. They have acknowledged that some relics of the site have been reburied. I'm still trying to establish exactly what. I want to know if any pillars specifically have been reburied.
This is normal archaeological procedure, kiddos. They backfill a site to protect it. Conservation and presentation requires selecting areas to be exposed for tourists to see and others to be covered up. Totally standard.
Another possible explanation is that it has religious context. As we've seen, they're trying to completely cancel Christianity altogether. It's quite interesting. They don't want the Bible to exist. They want to just get rid of Christianity, which is so bizarre. And if there's anything we've noticed over the last number of years, is that anything that they want to cancel seems to be the truth.
Yes, whining about cancel culture while pandering to a fan base of brainwashed Christian fundamentalists and displaying a profound ignorance regarding other religions. He's pretending that the dirty Muslims from Turkey are hiding evidence of Noah's Ark because it goes against their dirty religion, even though Muslims believe in the myth of Noah's Ark. He makes this claim even more clearly in his other InfoWars appearance because he can be even more overt with his racism here, since literally everyone watching that show is a worthless bigot.
If nothing else, not everyone will buy into the conspiracy, but I will say this, if nothing else, it would stand to upend various religions across the world. And since we're talking about Turkey, which of course is a run that operates on Islamic law, that site in itself stands to upend a lot of historical and religious text.
Yeah, again, fundamentalist Muslims believe in Noah's Ark. Also, Turkey isn't run on Islamic law, it's a secular nation. But what's racism without a hefty dollop of stupid? Anyway, back to his cancel culture bullshit. No, Jimbo, nobody is canceling the Bible. And this whole diatribe is just your attempt at conditioning people to think that anything educated people expose as lies must automatically be true. It's pathetic. You might as well be Terrence Howard claiming 1 × 1 = 2, and when the white man says otherwise, they're just trying to keep the black man down.
5 to 10% has been excavated, and I say 10% just to kind of give some leeway because some archaeologists have said, well, surely it's more than 5% now. I'm like, okay.
Well, isn't that quite the backpedal? Surely it's more than 5% now. Now? Meaning that more has been excavated over time? Jimmy is simultaneously admitting that excavation is ongoing and that he was lying about how much has been excavated, which he regularly claims is based on ground-penetrating radar survey. 10 instead of 5 is 100% error, jackass. Do better.
There's more than 500 legends of a flood that encapsulate, or at least that go across 5 continents around the world.
Right.
Asia has flood stories, Africa has flood stories, Europe has flood stories, the Native Americans do as well, the Aborigines in Australia do. So there's obviously something there.
Yeah, what's there is that flooding is a thing that happens. It can rain a lot and a river can overflow and flood a city. It's a thing that happens everywhere, which is why everyone has myths about it. Everyone has myths about the sun and the moon too. Do you know why? Because everybody can fucking see them. Drop the biblical angle, moron. It only makes you look even dumber.
I should probably give a shout out to Ben Davidson of Suspicious Observers, Sun Space Weather News on Twitter. He did an interview with Alex Jones just a number of weeks ago during that spectacular solar flare that caused the auroras across the northern hemisphere. And this is something that he studied in great detail.
Funny how all these shitty cults overlap and cross-reference each other, huh? I wonder if they have referral programs. Or maybe Jimmy just keeps name-dropping Ben to remind people that there's someone else who's more depraved and psychotic than him.
Do you perceive a worldwide conspiracy to keep all of this information down, or do you think each one of these things is sort of has their own explanation?
So there's a few things there. I will say that when it comes to archaeologists that teach in school, I don't think they're covering anything up. I don't think they're part of some vast conspiracy. If there is, it goes above them. What I will say is that the evidence of what we were taught in school involving the true history of mankind is completely false. We were indeed older than we were taught, and we were indeed more advanced than what we were taught in school. Right. That the alleged primitive methods that they've repeatedly taught, which is based on no evidence, the Egyptians never said they used copper-based tooling to do any of these things. They're incredible achievements.
The Egyptians never said they used copper tools. Well, we found a bunch of copper tools there, dumbass. It's so cute how he frames archaeology professors as naive pawns in the grift of some faceless lizard people, when that's just his excuse to avoid engaging with everything that archaeology scholars factually know that debunks his pathetic script. It's like saying that atoms and molecules don't exist, but chemistry professors aren't in on it. They've been brainwashed. Well, how the fuck do chemists do chemical reactions then? No difference. There is precisely zero evidence for any super old, super advanced civilization. End of story.
Why aren't archaeologists more pissed off at this? I mean, why? I mean, they're sitting here. This is like it's like a starving kid seeing a giant cake. Why are they not running at it? Why are they not demanding that they get access to this information and this site?
So the response out of the archaeological community since I broke this story has been the most bizarre thing I've ever witnessed. Let me just say one little point here to make it crystal clear that I'm not saying that there are zero excavations happening at Göbekli Tepe. Yes, there are researchers and archaeologists out there today. But to be clear, there's no meaningful large-scale excavation taking place. That is being postponed for future generations.
Actually, you specifically say that verbatim all the time. You say that excavation has been completely halted. So thanks for admitting that you're a lying, flip-flopping jerk. Excavation is ongoing, and you lack both the experience and mental capacity to understand what they're doing and why they are doing it that way.
Most of the archaeological community is very woke. If you look at their various social media profiles, it is crazy. You know, it is as woke as it gets, and that comes with a certain mindset of a group think, and they band together like some team. And I'm like, I'm literally trying to help these people.
Sounds like Jimbo's got a touch of the woke derangement syndrome. The only groupthink is how everyone in your cult gargles Graham Hancock's balls on a daily basis and regurgitates the same 1,000 times debunked talking points, no matter how many times you're shown how dumb and wrong you are. The idea that you are trying to help the archaeological community is as hilarious as claiming that Hitler was trying to help the Jews. All you do is shit on legitimate archaeology scholars on a daily basis, lying about their work, slandering them, encouraging your idiot fans to harass them, and playing the victim the second that any of them engage with you with far more charity than you deserve. Anyway, Jimmy made it onto Rogan one more time, alongside full-time Civil War reenactor Dan Richards. We covered this one in the Graham Hancock video, but let's hit a few snippets that we missed.
They're going to defer a full-scale excavation for, quote, future generations with a 150-year estimated time frame for a full excavation of Göbekli Tepe. And I'm like, wait a second. Are you serious? Like, this makes no sense. We're talking about arguably not just the world's oldest ancient site, but arguably the most mysterious, because it's, like you were just saying, it's not supposed to exist. Based on everything we were taught in school, it's supposed to be the Sumerians.
It's not the oldest human site, genius. We know of sites that are millions of years old. It's not supposed to exist. Why? Where are you getting this? You keep pretending that archaeologists have emphatically claimed that nothing older than Sumer could possibly exist. It's idiotic. And again, not fully excavating a site immediately is standard procedure. You really should learn literally anything about what archaeologists do.
But their excuses, they have said, one of which is that, well, we want to wait for future technologies to develop so we can more safely excavate the site. And I'm like, wait a second, hold on a second. We're talking about pillars buried in dirt. It's 2024. Do not tell me that we do not have the technological capability to dig rocks up.
Yeah, we can dig stuff up out of dirt. The point is to do it without damaging what's down there, you moron. What good is it to dig everything up if we destroy it by doing so? More advanced precision technologies are developed all the time, which will prevent irreversible damage during excavation. If you want to learn about which areas are being excavated over others and why, and what sorts of methods will be used to excavate the rest when it's appropriate to do so, you could try actually talking to experts in the field instead of peddling conspiracy theories on the internet for cash.
It's somewhere between 5 and 10% excavated.
Which means that so here's it says some archaeological sites that where only 10% or less have been uncovered.
None of which date back anywhere near remotely as old as Göbekli Tepe. And so just to put this into perspective, Göbekli Tepe, according to ground penetrating radar, consists of approximately 200 T-shaped pillars. Only 72 of them have been unearthed.
72 out of 200. Well, that's more than a third now, isn't it? So why the fuck are you whining about 5 to 10% if these pillars are what get your mojo pumping? In general, you used to say 5%, now it's 5 to 10, and those numbers are pulled out of your ass anyway. This is all just a script you've memorized that has nothing to do with the site.
One of the photos that Jamie that you showed earlier was before excavations began, and do you notice that there was no trees there? Right. So one of the controversies is that there's some 800 trees that were planted on the site a full decade after excavations began, and the trees are buried on or were planted on top of ancient ruins, which stand to not only destroy the ruins but also highlights that they can't excavate what's underneath them when the trees are there. And so here's the before and after.
So what's the conventional explanation for why they planted all these trees over a site that they know is filled with ruins underneath?
This was private farmland when the trees were planted. It's trees planted by farmers to increase the land value. They know from radar that there's nothing immediately below the surface there, and roots help prevent soil erosion anyway. We should note that this is Jimbo's dialed down accusations. He used to pretend it wasn't farmers that planted the trees, but rather the WEF or some other conspiratorial crap. Rest assured, whenever he's spewing this song and dance about nefarious tree planting, he's full of shit.
So the head of archaeology in Turkey took great issue with my conspiracy theories on it, and he was quoted in an article saying that I should be sanctioned, and then he followed up with, like, I will be sanctioned. And I'm like, well, how are you going to keep me out of Göbekli Tepe? Have I been banned from Turkey? Because American citizens don't need a visa to go into Turkey unless they're going to be there more than 90 days. So if I could apply ahead of time. Like in Egypt, you can apply for your tourism visa ahead of time, and I know if I was rejected. That's what he said, is that I'll be sanctioned. He was referring to me, and I'm like,
What
Okay.
does that mean?
Well, it means travel bans.
Yeah, it means you're not going to let him in the country.
It means I go to the airport and get rejected at customs potentially.
And that is possibly what would happen.
He said it will happen.
gonna
I don't know
try?
that it's happened. Well, that
You
I-
can give it
flights
a
to
go?
Turkey are actually a little bit pricey, and I'm like, well, damn it. I'm like, if I'm going to land there and get turned around, that
That
would
would
suck.
suck.
Well, you might be able to make a nice video about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be actually. Yeah. You're
Yeah.
right. That's a video.
Sure. I mean, kind of like helps you.
You're right. I'm over the target with Göbekli Tepe.
Right.
Yes, become even more famous as the grifting fraud telling so many lies about Göbekli Tepe that Turkish officials actually call you out for being a piece of garbage. Joe's cancel culture alarm dings aggressively, and he says, awesome, get canceled by Turkey, and I'll have you on the show again to whine about being canceled. Spoiler alert, after this he did indeed go to Turkey, had absolutely no problem getting in since nobody actually gives two shits about some pointless YouTuber, but he couldn't resist titling a video, I snuck into Göbekli Tepe, because admitting that he's just some nobody tourist visiting a popular site of tourism and doing absolutely nothing relevant there just doesn't have the same kick to it.
However, I am pleased to say that I went through with no issue at all. But I figured that if there was one place in all of Turkey that I would be recognized, it would be at Göbekli Tepe, as I know for a fact that those who oversee the excavation at that site know exactly who I am, and it's fair to say that they are not fans of me at all. So the obvious decision was for me to put on a hat and sunglasses and visit the site incognito to help mitigate the chance of being recognized and kicked out. Because again, it would really suck to travel 8,000 miles from home all the way over to Sanliurfa, Turkey, only to be asked to leave the one site I needed to visit and document above all else.
Yes, the security staff at Göbekli Tepe have been scanning for Jimmy in 10-hour shifts around the clock for a full year, and they were dead set on catching him with their array of ultra-sophisticated detection techniques. But clever Jimmy put on a hat and sunglasses, and with this masterful disguise, he slipped through their sophisticated wall of security without a trace, just like some Mission Impossible shit. How is this asshole not embarrassed? He clearly didn't get the juicy footage he wanted of officials escorting him off the premises, so he's literally playing pretend secret agent like a little child, just so he can seem cool to the losers who watch his content, when in reality, he's nothing but a tourist, exactly like anyone else who went there that month. Unreal. Anyway, that's more or less the meat of it. One of the best ways to see that Jimmy is just a pointless grifter is the way he dials the crazy up or down depending on the venue. For Rogan, he dials it down a little bit because Joe likes to pretend he's talking to scholars, and his fans want to feel that way too. So he does his sad impression of an academic when he's on there. But when he goes on InfoWars, holy shit, the crazy goes up to 11.
Yes, if they know that that's happening, they're not going to share it with us. And in the meantime, they're going to completely control the narrative, and they're going to try to profit off it because they're going to try to live. People should be looking at how billionaires have built underground bunkers. People should be looking at, I just came across something where, Jeff Bezos back in 2018 built a underground clock in the Sierra Diablo Mountains between Colorado and New Mexico, between New Mexico and Texas. It's 500 feet underground. It takes one time per year for 10,000 years. And it costed, I forgot how many, it was tens of millions of dollars. Why on earth would one of the richest people on earth choose to build something like that? I'm inclined to think that it's a doomsday plot.
Yes, rich people are profiting off of the narrative they are controlling so that they can be even richer once they destroy the world and kill everybody. Makes perfect sense. I can hear Alex Jones pounding his fists from here. And of course, although we've highlighted enough lies and pageantry to make anyone's stomach churn, we can't finish the video without highlighting what a disgusting, toxic piece of shit Jimmy is, primarily on Twitter. Let's just do a lightning round of some of his greatest hits. First up, the cancer stuff. Yes, Jimmy repeatedly accused Flint of faking his cancer to get out of debating Graham. In this particular tweet, he offers the alternative hypothesis of Flint developing cancer due to his hateful, vitriolic online behavior because he hates himself and has an inferiority complex. How's that for projection? Yes, the real archaeologist has an inferiority complex, not the loser cosplaying as one on the internet. I've been nothing but nice to Flint. This reeks of a belligerent man shouting, "Why do you make me do this?" as he beats the shit out of his girlfriend. Keep this one in the back of your head as we continue. Jimmy has harassed a YouTuber named Trey the Explainer quite a bit. Here he is shouting coward along with his usual script of bullshit. Why is Jimmy so mad at Trey? Because Trey calls him out for being a loser loser fraud. Have you ever held an artifact you personally unearthed, Jimbo? Of course not. You're not an archaeologist. You're an internet troll. Here's Trey calling out Jimmy for whining about how slow excavation is, despite having never excavated anything and having absolutely no idea how excavation works. This is, of course, because Jimmy is a pathetic little poser playing Indiana Jones, while real researchers do real work in the field that he doesn't understand. Here's Jimmy accusing Trey of using bots because he can't handle a legitimate source of information being more popular than him. Don't worry, Trey is aware of the humor here and continues ratioing Jimmy like the Dickens on his own tweets. Other people call him out for this toddler cope tactic, and Jimmy has a meltdown. You're retarded. He absolutely 100% was using bots, and you're a piece of shit for commenting on it this way. Clown emoji. Well, archaeology and history YouTuber North02, you will now be yet another victim of Jimmy's unhinged wrath. Here's the same guy posting an innocuous photo getting a drink. Jimmy replies with, "Fucking drunk drinking alone at a bar and posting it on social media, and you almost got 10 likes in a day. Total loser." First, it should be known that Jimmy is an alcoholic, so this is blatant projection. He has no clue if this person is drunk, and he has no clue if this person is alone. But sure, let's mock him for not getting tons of likes on this random photo. That's not pathetic at all. As it turns out, the guy was there on vacation with his girlfriend. Whoops. It seems like Jimbo immediately realized how fucking pathetic he looks here and deleted his tweet, but the internet never forgets. The harassment continues, however. First of all, you're a nameless, faceless pussy that wouldn't say that to my face, and considering my following is astronomically larger than yours says it all. Enjoy the sidelines. Yeah, if only this guy with 500,000 subscribers could start peddling idiotic conspiracies so he would be invited on Joe Rogan and have his channel grow. He says, "I enjoy my privacy, but I would gladly meet you in the boxing ring anytime. You can't bully me, Mr. Corsetti." Uh-oh, what do you say to that challenge, wee little Jimmy? Yeah, sure, okay, nameless, faceless pussy. Don't forget the following part, Mr. Jealous. Jimmy's misogyny and his cowardice are having a boxing match here, the kind he's too afraid to participate in himself. Guys who call other men pussies as an insult tend to be upset about doing very poorly with women. Yep, just as I thought, bullies cower when they finally get stood up to. Have fun never contributing to archaeology on the sidelines. If you are ever in Minneapolis, I would be happy to get some rounds in. Otherwise, keep the word pussy to yourself. North makes the challenge a little more public. How do you think he'll take it? Shut the fuck up, you nameless, faceless pussy. By the way, you just exposed that you liked your own tweet. Clown emoji. He's really sticking with this pussy angle while refusing to box a man who could clearly kick the shit out of him. And according to Kurt, anybody could. He's a little bitch with spaghetti arms. And inevitably, the blocking. To be clear, it's not so much the blocking that's pathetic, it's the fact that he makes fun of anyone who blocks him, since he's an insufferable troll, who then hypocritically blocks everyone who gets the better of him in any interaction. And don't think that everyone can't see that that's exactly what's happening, Jim. Here's Jimmy calling a respected scholar a retarded bitch. Here he is calling more people retards. Is this guy related to Ashton Forbes? Here he is making overtly anti-Semitic tweets with triple parentheses. Here he is responding to someone informing him that he makes overtly anti-Semitic tweets by calling him an incel retard on 4chan. Here's Flint proving that Jimmy's Nazi rhetoric results in harassment from literal Nazis. Nazis like this worthless Nazi. Don't forget Jimmy actively mobilizing his Nazi fans to get Flint fired. Here's Jimmy flexing with some "you mad bro" antics. Here he is being a misogynistic douchebag. Here he is calling Milo a pussy and bragging about having been a tourist at more places than Milo, which probably isn't even true anyway. Here he is accusing Dr. David Miano of being a pervert who sexually harasses his female students, and he claims that 95% of the accounts he follows are thoughts and models, leaving, of course, as evidence, this screenshot containing precisely 0 of those. And when called out for this crap, he comes back with sleazy lying pervert. And why not one more tweet complaining about a bathing suit photo as though this isn't fucking Instagram and making claims about Diddy parties? And then when David says, hey, what the fuck are you doing making up this crap? He kicks it up a notch and says that all 1,000 of the accounts he follows are models and sex workers. It's all there for everyone with eyes to see that no, they definitely aren't. Here he is acting like a worthless hypocrite, telling everybody to stop being such a mean bully to Daddy Graham the fraud when he's famous for being the biggest bully on Twitter. Slanderous insults and defamatory remarks, Jimbo? Really? We also can't resist making fun of Dan Richards a little bit for initially being critical of Jimmy and calling him out for his bullshit. These are DMs with Milo where they talk about how much Jimmy sucks. But when Graham decided to bring Dan and Jimmy into his inner circle, he just decided Jimmy's all good. Funny how that works, huh? Anyway, with Jimmy buried under 10 feet of rubble, let's talk to some actual scholars, shall we? First up, a chat with Lee Clare, field director at Göbekli Tepe. Why listen to Jimmy lie about what's going on there when we can talk to somebody who actually knows and isn't a lying fraud? Let's chat with Lee now. Lee, thanks so much for joining me here. The viewers have just watched me go through an hour of Jimmy's lies, many of which are about Göbekli Tepe. So I think that it's a great opportunity having you here to just talk about some of the things that are true about the site. So can you please, just tell us about, what is being excavated, how the continuity of it, what are some new finds, what are the portions that are being left for later? Just, give us the basic rundown.
Okay, well, obviously Göbekli Tepe has been running as a project now for 3 decades. Started back in the mid-1990s with Klaus Schmidt and Harald Hauptmann and the Ulfa Museum. And of course, things have progressed since then. Of course, in 2014, we lost Klaus Schmidt, who was the excavation director at the time. And the excavation went back to the museum. The museum was doing the directorship, and I was corporation partner. I'm a corporation partner. And of course, we have a new excavation director, Necmi Karul, who is also the excavation director of Karahan Tepe, and also he's coordinator of the Taş Tepeler project. So there's, as you know, there's lots of sites being excavated down there at the moment in southeastern Turkey, in Şanlıurfa. With regard to Göbekli Tepe, I mean, we've never stopped excavating. In fact, we've been there every year apart from the COVID year. And we are concentrating on various areas, in fact. So this year, for example, there was a lot of excavation going on in the main excavation area, the big white sort of Pringle-shaped shelter. We were focusing on that area. There was a big team there. There was a team from Istanbul University excavating in buildings C, A, B, C, and D, in fact, this year, with another team doing conservation work in building C. I was with my team up on the mound just above that area to the south of the so-called Wish Tree, where we're excavating a domestic area. But we were also looking at other domestic areas over in GT2, that's a second shelter. And so we've been concentrating very much on the domestic side of things, the domestic buildings, because of course, as you're probably aware, in the past several years, we've become, really, we've done a lot of, we've looked at the old records, the old excavation records of Klaus Schmidt from his time. We've been doing new excavations in several areas and have really sort of affirmed that we're dealing with a settlement here and not just with a ritual site. Right. So it's not this sort of mountain sanctuary that Klaus Schmidt put forward in his hypothesis, but more a settlement with a ritual focus, as it were. So we've got domestic activity at the site from the earliest period, from the PPNA, so from the mid-10th millennium BC, right up until the end of the 9th millennium BC. And of course, domestic buildings change over time. And of course, the domestic buildings give us an impression or give us an idea of how people are actually living, and in combination with these special buildings. So it gives an overall picture of the site and not just this focus on the monumentality and on the special buildings.
Right. Absolutely. So are there areas that you have cause to believe there's more fragility than others, and these are the areas that you're leaving for later? And what are the kind of techniques that you anticipate will allow others to excavate these in the future? Just some clarity on that, I think.
Okay, I mean, the fact is, a lot of these areas, it's a big site. Obviously, it's 9 hectares. It's a massive site. Mm-hmm. There are lots of trenches already open by Klaus Schmidt. In fact, most of them were actually opened by Klaus Schmidt, but they've never been completed. Klaus always focused on the special buildings and all of these domestic structures around abouts that we now interpret as domestic. they were only partially excavated. So we're actually sort of continuing his excavations in those trenches and adding additional trenches to that. So that's one way of, because there's no point excavating new trenches when an old trench is not yet finished.
Right.
But the thing is, what you have to realize is when we excavate, we have to make sure that, conservation is involved, because as soon as you excavate, the thing's open, it's in the air, it's in the open air, and it's fragile, obviously. So we have to keep up with the conservation work as well. There are various techniques for the conservation, but it's important that the stuff we do excavate is protected. And actually, it's three things we have to consider when we're excavating at Göbekli Tepe. There's obviously our academic questions that we have that I just spoke about. We also have, of course, the conservation that I just mentioned, but also the presentation to the public, because, of course, people are coming to the site. It is UNESCO site. It's gaining a lot of attention at the moment with the other Taş Tepeler projects. And it's so important that it's made accessible to them. And for that reason, there's a lot we have to do. That doesn't say we can't excavate new trenches. We are excavating new trenches. We are continuing our research in other parts of the site that are unexcavated using geophysics and later on georadar. That's a new project that's coming along now that's going to continue next year. So it's all things are happening up there. It's a very big undertaking in a way, because you have to think about so much.
Right.
Of course, in my function, I'm a corporation partner, and my focus is obviously on academic side of things. But of course, we always have to think about these other things as well: site management, tourism management, which we're also involved in a lesser extent. But it's part of the parcel.
Right. It's like it's an interesting balance there. There like tourism has to be encouraged, but then there has to be infrastructure there to allow people to gain viewing access. So like these are completely different teams, though. I would imagine that you advise that other team because you know the site, so where the paths go and things like that. Like you have to be working together, but they're different teams essentially, right?
Oh, we cooperate very closely. I mean, we have to. If a new pathway is involved, of course, we're there to check that everything's okay.
Yeah.
But, there's been a lot of stuff going through the media that, I don't know, that things are being covered up that are unexcavated by the pathways. I mean, this is the best protection for the underlying archaeology, not to excavate them. And the site is so big, the area of the pathway is so minute in comparison to the entire site. And also those areas that are excavated, where pathways are there, I mean, the monument is safe. I mean, of course, we take all that into consideration. Mm-hmm. So we are there at hand, obviously, and it was the same with the construction of the shelters. The amount of work, protection measures that went into that project was amazing. I mean, you have to imagine that the whole of the main excavation area and also the other area with the second shelter, the areas of the two shelters, they were filled with sandbags, and we were there at hand. We were there almost the entire year, 16, 17, 18, in that period when they were being constructed. We had an enormous amount of work to do, making sure that the site was protected, and we did that very well. There was no damage from the construction of these walkways from the shelters. Mm-hmm. And there's been some criticism as well that the areas beneath the shelter cannot be excavated. That's also untrue. We're excavating underneath the shelter just a couple of years ago, and also this year we're excavating in areas beneath the walkways because, of course, they're actually elevated.
Right. And the thing that I mentioned with the concrete, I mean, that also went through the media. There's no concrete being used in the construction of these pathways around the site. That's just fabricated. Yeah. Yeah, the idea that you guys wouldn't know what you're doing in terms of laying pathways that don't damage the site, like it's just the short-sightedness of these conspiracy theorists. The other question, I just had one more question about these conspiracy theories. This whole thing about the trees, the planting of the trees, and then you can't, can you just elucidate that a little bit and what that's been like?
Well, it's a topic that's been spoken about and debated so much, and
right.
It's so tiresome. Of course, the trees were there before I even arrived at the site. I joined the excavation for the first time in 2014 in the spring, and the trees were already there. And they had been planted by the local farmers for compensation reasons, because they knew that the site was going to be purchased by the Turkish state, and it was about compensation. And they obviously got their compensation. And then it was also a question of, the trees are there. And at some point they do have to be removed, but that's also a long process. The various regulations about olive trees and in this part of the world, and that they are protected in a way. And there are so many people you have to speak to. I mean, it wasn't actually my job to do that. That happened above, on the level above me. But of course, there are different. The Turkish Ministry of Culture was involved. The Ministry for Forestry was involved. We had to make sure that the trees could be replanted elsewhere. That had to be sorted. And there's all the local politics as well. Of course, the trees were a very important factor for the local community, because it was their sort of last connection to the site in a way. They were still harvesting them sometimes and various things. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of factors involved there. And we were very lucky that, it was this year in February, March time, that eventually that process came to a close and we were able to remove the trees, which happened. I was at the site when that was happening and monitoring what was going on, and I can assure you that there was no damage to the archaeology done. There was a lot of debate on social media about whether the roots were damaging the archaeology. The roots, as I saw them, were very flat. They were still in the topsoil, and there was no damage to the underlying archaeology whatsoever, as far as I could see.
Yeah, I tried my best to kind of follow the development of that particular conspiracy theory, and just at first denying that it was even that they were privately planted, and then having to admit that because it was obviously true, and then debating about whether there was damage. It just they kind of will go for anything that they think can stick. I mean, speaking about all that, I guess my last question would be, and you can speak as vaguely or specifically as you would like, the perspective in terms of, Jimmy Corsetti specifically, but in general, this pseudoarcheology cult and the fervor that is thrown towards this site in particular, the harassment and everything that surrounds it. Just anything that you'd like to comment on about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big topic. And, for a start off, I've been trying to work out why Göbekli Tepe is such a magnet for this sort of thing. And I've never really understood it. I mean, I've looked into it. I mean, give it some thought. But, obviously the site is in a region of the world that is very, how can I put it, religiously charged. It's Şanlıurfa is a city of prophets. Abraham's birth cave. There's so much sort of this sort of thing attached to Şanlıurfa. And then Göbekli Tepe came along, and Klaus Schmidt promoted it as the world's first temples, a term that I don't actually agree with. I prefer to see the buildings as special buildings that have more than this ritual function. But that's perhaps going too far for this conversation. Mm-hmm. But all of this seems, and there's one thing that really sticks out, and it's, I don't know who said it or where it came from, whether it was an archaeologist, a journalist, or someone else, but there was a statement that the archaeologists were surprised because they never thought that hunter-gatherers would ever have been capable of constructing something like we have at Göbekli Tepe. And of course, that opened the doors to this sort of, to everyone really, to sort of, and these conspiracy theorists in a way, with explanations that aren't based on archaeology, that are based on just, none of these people, the Graham Hancocks, the Jimmy Corsettis, they've never actually been involved with the archaeology of the site. They've never done a day's excavation at the site. They've never seen what we have to deal with and what we're doing, right. What the archaeology is, how we excavate, what the finds are, the contexts. They don't read the papers really, as far as I can see, and they just sort of pick the best bits out that sort of fit best to their stories. And of course, they're doing all of these narratives and promoting them, and obviously they're better at social media than us archaeologists.
Yeah.
We have other things to deal with. Although we try to push back when we can, but when I try to push back and try and put things into perspective, then I get so much aggression towards me.
Right.
And that's very sad because in a way, all I want to do is to put the facts on the table and tell people as it is. But whenever I say something or write something or post something, it's twisted, it's pulled out of context. People take, old documents and put them on the net and say, but you said this, but you said that. Of course, things change in archaeology. But it was actually so much hate as well. And I actually left social media once a little while back after I got a lot of abuse. Actually, I was very naive. In fact, I tried to communicate with Jimmy Corsetti and try and explain the situation. And I remember distinctly I was sitting here on Twitter and trying to answer his question why, I don't know what it was about, why we were so slow at excavating. We're not slow. It's just a normal excavation procedure. But the whole time I was trying to answer him, I was getting abuse from his followers on social media, and very nasty things indeed. And after that, I got a lot of flack and a lot of, I should resign. I shouldn't be there. I'm irresponsible. It's a crime against humanity what I'm doing, etc., etc. And that's, he never once called them back. His followers. It was obvious where this was all coming from, but he never once said anything to them.
No. And then plays the victim when any of that energy gets put back on him. It's incredible.
And I quit after that. I left social media for a while, but then I thought, why should I? Because I think there were still lies being propagated, there were still untruths being told, and I returned this year, and because I just think it's I want to push back, I want to put out some truths there, and I want to make sure that the facts are on the table, and that's what I did. And of course, I've been getting, again, it doesn't matter what I post. If I post something that's about site management or something, I don't usually post about site management. If I answer or make a comment to someone that says something stupid regarding the speed of excavation or the time frame of excavation, then he picks up on it and attacks me straight away.
Yeah.
But if I put something up, and strangely enough, if I put something up about the actual archaeology and the contents and the pre-pottery Neolithic and academic questions, he's quiet.
Nothing.
It's a concern troll, and that's all he's doing. He doesn't have any other topic to talk about apart from his concern, his so-called concern for the site management.
Yeah, there's zero interest in archaeology or facts or reality. It's just a route to a particular grift. It's a salacious grift. It's a site that lends itself to these outlandish narratives. And over a decade of grifting, he's had so many opportunities to learn literally the first thing about archaeology, never has. And it's just blatantly transparent. So I do applaud you. I do it definitely takes courage for you to have returned to social media. I want to applaud you for, having the courage and taking the time to continue to speak out. I'm over here just trying to kind of amplify voices that I think need to be as loud as the trolls and just kind of bring a volume and an intensity that mirrors theirs, but as a voice for truth, and try to drown them out. Or move in that direction anyway. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, but you notice how worked up I get about this when I'm talking about it. My voice is a bit, because it does really annoy me. And
of course it does.
It's so sad because there are people out there that want to learn or want to know what the archaeologists are doing.
Right.
And he's really destroying that for them because, if he keeps doing this, then, what choice do I have but leave? But I don't want to get abuse all the time.
Yes.
I've got to look after myself.
Yeah, the volume, the content and the noise and the fervor surrounding this site is 100 to 1 lies to truth. And what we have to bring that balance in check for archaeology, for medicine, for literally every single topic of scientific inquiry.
So right, yeah.
But this cult has caught my eye as of late, and I'm working my way down the roster. And thanks so much for speaking with me and providing factual information. And I hope all my viewers will follow you and continue to be updated about the site from you and your colleagues. And I just think it's tremendous. So thanks very much.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for what you're doing. It's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. And then, of course, why not check in with our good friend Flint Dibble, the most hated archaeology scholar in the world to the pathetic pseudoarcheology cult. Perhaps he has a few things to say about Jimmy and who else we can expose moving forward. Flint, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to chat a little bit about our good friend, Mr. Corsetti. You've suffered probably more abuse from him than almost anybody else, or at least pretty much up there. Is he still active on Twitter? I'm not on Twitter, so is he up to all his old tricks, or what's he doing?
Oh yes, he was just harassing me yesterday in big ways. Yeah, he's trying to convince me to debate him now on a podcast, and I'm like, no, fuck you. You've said that I faked my cancer. You've slurred my Jewish heritage. You've convinced your fans to call my university to get me fired. I'm not debating you in any
Well,
situation.
you could rub all of that right in his dumb face in the debate. Where does he want to do this?
he wants to do it on a pseudoarcheology podcast. And it's called Matt Bial's Limitless podcast or whatever. And the guy's a pseudoarchaeologist and a Jimmy fan. So no, that's a bad venue.
Yeah. Well, I think a neutral venue. Yeah. If he's really so confident in his prowess, then a neutral venue should suffice for him as well. So
yeah. I
or
could
Rogan.
maybe see. I'm not going back on Rogan unless I get a solo episode after he's slandered me so much.
That's fair. Yeah, I think
like
that's
there's a certain right to reply to what's already been said about me that I feel like I deserve.
100%. Yeah, that whole arc, like I was just getting into the whole saga and then watching that debate and then seeing the next episode with whoever it was, like Dan or somebody, or I don't know, Graham.
Yeah.
Well, no,
Graham,
there was
and then
another one
Jimmy.
with Graham where he was just like, well, Flint just lies. And I was like, what the shit are you talking about? Where are you pulling that from? Like, what are you saying?
You know what's crazy? I don't know if you've seen my video on Rogan, but he actually spent 6 months praising me. And then he had Graham on and he let it off with Flint lied.
Yeah,
so
there was clearly some backdoor dealings there. Just like, look, come on, we have a symbiosis here. I draw, you green light my grift and I get you eyeballs. Like, let's work together here.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what is because I kind of bounce around from various different cults and conspiracies. So I'm not like quite as invested in the pseudoarchaeology cult. What is the status of it now? Who is waxing and waning? It seems like it's possible Dan is kind of defunct, and then Jimmy, is he like on the way out, or is he gearing up for more stuff? Who are the rising stars? Like where are we at with this cult here?
Yeah, well, the cult is still strong as ever. Jimmy has sort of shot himself in the foot by not really doing anything this year. He went to Göbekli Tepe and he visited the site and he released that video in March, and that was his only video until about a week ago, where he just released a sort of Graham ripoff video about Darren Kuyu, which rips off Graham's ideas from Ancient Apocalypse. And so, Jimmy just has been on Twitter, raging on Twitter all year, and that's kind of what he does.
Right.
Dan Richards, he's kind of, I don't know. He can't. You made fun of him actually for that. Yeah, his only big video this year is the one where he mixed up two sites in Egypt and pretended they were the same site, and therefore accused Egyptologists of lying. That's the only video I think he's made this year that's cracked 100K.
He's made a big video where he just said, "Hi, I can't read," and then Jimmy, it's like I don't keep on top of this stuff, so I watched that video just to make this video, and he's literally just like, they don't want me to go to Göbekli Tepe, but I put on a hat and sunglasses and I snuck it. It's like, nobody gives a shit that you're there, you fucking tourist. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's
They're
ridiculous,
not
dude.
From going in. It's so stupid.
Anyone can go, dude. It's incredible.
But no, the biggest news of the year, the biggest, most viral claim is actually a video that I'm going to be releasing tomorrow. So I hope it comes out before your video here. It's about these scans under the pyramids, where they claim there's these structures that go down 2 kilometers. So guess what I've discovered? I finally did some deep diving. The Italian scientist that makes these claims, he thinks it can be used for mining and for oil prospection and for geology and for archaeology, right? And this is what he's been claiming all year. And he put in a patent 3 years ago for this, and he's let it expire over the last year. So clearly he has no faith in his own fucking methods. And everybody's like, no, but they're a new method. You gotta wait for him to publish and all this kind of stuff. So that's one of the big ones. And in fact,
was it an error or a grift?
Oh, it was a grift, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. These guys have been going around. His co-author is this guy Corrado Malanga, who also has a PhD, but in chemistry, and he's really famous in Italy for hypnotizing people that were claimed to be abducted by aliens. So these guys have been grifting this entire time.
This does not reflect well on my people. I apologize. We're not all like this, us Italians.
Well, these guys are Italian, but not Italian American. But But yeah, so that's been the big one, and these guys are still rocking. One of their biggest boosters in the Anglo world, in the Anglo-American world, is this guy Jay Anderson, who just announced yesterday he's going to be on Rogan, and that should come out either today or tomorrow. So there's going to be a big wave more of this under the pyramids bullshit. So my video comes out just at the right time, thankfully, and I go through everything why I can't be there. But the other big people, there's this new kid on the block whose name is Michael Button. And he's as fraudulent as you could ever be. He actually has a degree in ancient history and archaeology from the University of Birmingham. So a really good university with a really good program in this stuff. And he just straight up lies about all these things. And he is entirely a Joe Rogan created creature, where he had like 100 subscribers when one of his videos gets seen by Joe Rogan and Joe Rogan mentions it on air, and he goes from 100 to 10,000 subscribers. And this was covered in the local newspaper. Yeah. And then he gets invited on Joe Rogan, and he jumps from, at this point, he must have had 20, 30,000 subs to over 100,000. And now he's climbing rapidly. He actually has a little more discipline than Jimmy. So he puts out about a video a week, and he's now at like 150, 160,000 subscribers. So he's growing rapidly, and he knows how to make sensational claims in a kind of Graham Hancock-like way where he's not toxic like Jimmy and Dan are. And so
I think that's probably the downfall of somebody like Jimmy, is just like if people can get these ridiculous claims from somebody who's smarter, better spoken, and not a toxic, insane, maniac, they're going to go to that other person, because it's like closer, like what Jimmy tried to be like Graham, but he can't because he's an asshole.
Exactly. And I think you're fully right. I think that the toxicity is Jimmy's downfall, because he's friends with the QAnon shaman. He's just, he's just an alt-right conspiracy. Here, wait, I got a tinfoil hat. He's got his tinfoil hat on all the time, and he just shits on people. And Dan Richards, on the other hand, is similarly toxic, but he doesn't have any creativity. He has no stories to spin. And then the other guy who's on the up that I see is this guy Ben Van Kerkwyk, Uncharted X. He's been around for a while, and he actually was on Rogan together with Jimmy at one point a few years ago. And he was just on Rogan twice in 3 months. Oh, and so I have a video debunking his Hawara thing, and I'm working on one on his granite vases. Because
the vases are the thing that I hear the most about. Just like this otherworldly precision, it could never be from people. I fancy that he would probably be the next one to hit. I assume for me.
We'll talk about that for sure. But do you know what just happened with the vases? Is his team? He had a team of collaborators that were measuring them, and they went to the Petrie Museum and other museums, and they just put out a paper. It actually just got published in like Nature's Journal of Heritage Science, an open access journal. And guess what? The team that was working with Ben Van Kerkwyk, they disproved him. So they did all these really close measurements of all these granite vases in museums and in private collections. It turns out that the ones in private collections, which don't have archaeological provenance, are more perfect than the ones in museums, which shows that they're modern forgeries made with modern machines.
Got it.
And so his own team has disproven him, which is
I can't wait for
came out yesterday or today.
The damage control on that is going to be pretty fun to observe, I imagine. It's
God.
How many humiliations can this cult suffer, back to back to back to back, and just keep going, just keep grifting? Like, it's incredible.
I think I've come to this conclusion that this is just what these people want to believe. They just want to, there's this quote that I pulled out on my Under the Pyramids video where Rogan was talking about with Michael Button. And he goes, I really hope these scans are proven wrong, not because he cares, but because he wants to give a big fuck you to archaeologists. And that's what they care about. It's about anti-intellectualism more, and about the fantasy more than the reality of anything. That's what they care about.
Those jerks that actually applied themselves and took the time and became experts and actually know what they're talking about, I want them to be wrong, and I want them to suffer. That's it.
Exactly. And that's where it comes back to Jimmy, where he will be perpetually popular because he is the most outspoken toxic troll in this community. He
Yeah.
is, I mean, the harassment he's done to Lee Clare and the Göbekli Tepe project is just through the roof. Like he's a case study when I go and talk to my colleagues about why
Right.
we need to worry about this, because it
Yeah.
impacts our colleagues here,
Yeah,
you know?
it's actually astounding to me that a miserable troll like that can have actual tangible impact, negative ramifications on archaeological excavation. And he has the balls to say, like, oh, I'm trying to help archaeology, I'm trying to help archaeologists. What are you talking about? You're just ruining everything.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's pure hatred. It's just pure hatred for us. And then like it's just, and his lies, like he was, what was it? I just had an interview with New Scientist that just came out, and in it I talked about how he's been lying about Göbekli Tepe and claiming the excavations were shut down. And he actually has the balls to tell New Scientist to issue a retraction because I lied about it. And it's like immediately a dozen archaeologists posted screenshots of his deleted tweets that are like, excavations have been shut down, they've come to a standstill, and all this stuff. It's just like, it's like he doesn't realize people take screenshots of what he says because we know he lies.
The internet never forgets. I think the strategy of a con man like that is to just like try desperately to erase all evidence of having said a wrong thing, very minimally tweak your language to be like, okay, let me be clear, there's like this tiny little bit of excavation going on, so that's true, but they mostly don't excavate anything, so I'm right about the thing. No, you're wrong. And I think that he's just dumb and didn't know that it was going on, and then said it confidently, and then, oh crap, I have to like figure out how to salvage this now,
Yeah, well, and he was getting a lot of publicity for it, so therefore he has to salvage it. He was on InfoWars and like fucking crazy programs like that, talking about how the excavations are shut down. So he has no choice but to save face, and to be honest, he just doesn't care. He's just a liar.
No,
like.
No, he's just he's hopped up on this very tiny bit of relevance he's gotten in this cult. It's income, it's status, it's fame. He's got all the positive reinforcement from the cult, and he will never deviate from this path now. Completely intellectually bankrupt, will never admit he's wrong about anything ever, and that's it. He's chosen this path. That's it.
But that's why I'm excited for your video, because he's on this path, and then your video is going to sit there and expose him for who he is.
Sure.
And
yeah.
so,
I mean, I already did that a little bit, but it's just like what I'm learning about this cult is that just if we keep pressing on it, just every single member of the cult, really exposing them. Obviously, people who are deeply entrenched in the cult won't watch the video and they just, this guy's a shill, whatever. But just the awareness in the general populace, and the people who are either about to slip down the pipeline or people who aren't at risk of that but are constantly interfacing with people who go down the pipeline, they're armed with the correct talking points. It just puts so much more pressure and arms rational people with the correct information to just start to like kind of asphyxiate the cult a little bit more effectively.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, I fully agree. I mean, I've encountered a lot of people that actually, and this has shocked me, that are in the cult and they actually see this kind of content and then they end up coming out of it.
It gives them pause.
It gives them pause. And I think archaeology is one of the worst for this, where this fake cult archaeology is legitimized by mainstream media. Like there's a lot of newspapers that publicize this stuff. It's on Netflix, it's on Amazon, it's on IMDb, listed as factual. And so I think that some people just legitimately think this is the truth.
Right.
And then they sort of say, oh, wait a second, this isn't the truth.
Yes.
Shit. And then they wake up and they're mad
just
that they got lied to.
Sort of got exposed to it, but they haven't been radicalized by it. So they're kind of like, comparing sources of information. Don't we have another Ancient Apocalypse season coming, or what's up with that?
I don't know. He's busy writing a book. Which
another one of
come
those.
out. I think he announced it spring 2027. I think my guess is the last Ancient Apocalypse season didn't do too well, and maybe it's not being renewed. But that said, with TV stuff, they keep this stuff under NDAs until they're ready to announce it. So who the hell knows?
We'll
really?
see.
Certainly, season 2, we did not know that it was whether it was happening or not until right before they announced it. There were a few rumors of him visiting places, but he's visiting places for his book right now, so that could also be a cover for it. I don't know. It's tough to say.
Plus, how many places are left for him to artificially inflate and
Well,
mean,
he claimed on Rogan that he wanted to invite Zahi Hawass to co-host season 3 with him in Egypt. And him and Zahi had some sort of reconciliation. I don't know how strong it was. I tried to get, when I interviewed Zahi Hawass for my pyramids video, I tried to get Zahi to talk about it, but he sort of didn't really want to talk too much about it. So I don't really know what's going on with that. I'd be shocked if Zahi Hawass reconciled with him in reality.
That's a bit too far. Yeah, he's a colorful figure, that guy. And I think ultimately it's like, I think Joe only invited him on to be like, see, I invite real archaeologists too, knowing that like he was going to be a little bit crotchety, and so that he could just be like, see, they're all like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, Joe specifically admitted afterwards that he invited it on due to Graham's urging.
Oh, really?
And so I think it might have been part of Graham trying to reconcile with Zahi, but I think it probably blew up in Graham's face because of the reception of that episode. And so, I probably made Graham look bad, like he was trying to set Zahi up for failure. And
yeah.
And I did a big review of that, and I blame Zahi for not going in there prepared. He should have known what he was walking into.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, and that's I think that's one of the main things is like making sure that scholars know like the script of the cult leaders, because it's like, like it's like a physicist that's debating a flat earther, or like a biologist that debates a creationist for the first time, and they just end up dumbfounded, like, where are you getting this crap? But they don't have like a response ready because they're not familiar with the talking points.
You're preaching to the choir. This is what we need to do. We need to start. We should do workshops for academics on how to engage with this stuff better, because they seem to think that they can just teach or explain like they do normally to a receptive, respectful audience, and it doesn't work in those kind of confrontational environments.
Yeah, fortunately, because there is something like this pseudoarchaeology cult in virtually every single scientific field that is devastating the scientific community right now, it's like everybody's kind of starting to get it and be like, okay, this is really bad. What are we going to do?
I mean, everybody in archaeology is starting to get it, but they're also starting to say, well, then we're just not going to engage. We'll let the experts like Flint and a few others that are engaging handle it.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that's really the right attitude. I think more of us need to engage and speak up.
Yeah. And then it slides down to me, who has to kind of like learn archaeology and like get the talking points from archaeologists and then just kind of amplify it, which is fine. That's what I do. I mean, I'm a generalist. I do in every debunk I do, whether it's anti-vaxxers or creationists or stuff like that. I'm often, relying on
I'm in awe, man. I'm in awe of how much you can absorb and then get out there so quickly. You're an expert at that.
Doing my best over here.
Yeah.
I'm scrambling to finish this one right now. So.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Cool.
All right, well,
yeah. Thanks this is a nice little wrap up for the video. Just we're gonna keep hammering away at this cult. I think we're gonna keep going with this. Go through as many of these figures as we can. Let's keep it up.
Let's rock them. Yeah, cool.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thanks, Flint. Anyway, as you can probably tell, I've made a firm decision to take a big dump all over this cult to the absolute fullest of my ability. These are some of the most toxic assholes on the entire internet, both the frauds and their loser fans. There is also quite a lot of overlap with the Avi Loeb bros, all the UAP bullshit, which ideally I will also tackle at some point, all the solar catastrophe fear-mongering crap, and of course anti-vax, virus denial, all the insane shit. These are gullible morons who imagine themselves raging against the establishment, which really just means basic facts, which is why they fall all over themselves to eat up literally any narrative that is framed as establishment bad, mainstream wrong, no matter how insane it is. Some jerk with a lab coat could tell them that eating your own fecal matter cures every disease imaginable, but keep it a secret since Big Pharma doesn't want you to know about it, and they'd be gobbling up their own turds with a fork and knife by lunchtime. These morons are beyond hopeless, willfully ignorant to the nth degree, and deserve nothing but mockery, so that's what they'll get from me. In the meantime, anyone who's just starting to fall down the pseudoscience pipeline from the pseudoarchaeology entry point will hopefully see this content and snap themselves out of it. I'll just be here running down the roster to make sure I piss off as many of these jerks as humanly possible. So that's it for Jimmy Corsetti, the Pete Hegseth of the pseudoarcheology cult. It's pretty safe to say that he and his loser cronies will shit their pants about this video and launch a pathetic counteroffensive. So let's all be on the lookout for that and whatever opportunities for humor it may provide, plus a few additional targets on the horizon. Until next time.